when we're starting. I'm gonna come in there and set up your page so you can see the comments.
Alrighty.
All right, we're live. All right, it's connecting through, so we're good there. We'll do this countdown. We'll go live.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Tonight we're having a father-daughter discussion celebrating Women's History Month. And I chose this avenue versus just highlighting a woman because I wanted to look at the foundation of women and young ladies. And I truly believe that having a strong relationship with your father dictates and helps direct a woman's path and where she goes and ends up in life. And I just wanted to have a discussion, an open discussion, honest discussion between two young women that I know very well. One's my daughter, and the other is a lifelong friend who we consider family, named Adia. Adia is a senior right now at Princeton University. Carol graduated last year from American, and they've been friends since birth, basically. The fathers are fraternity brothers. They've known each other for a very long time, Alpha fraternity. And so I just wanted to start the discussion. I always like to start off with a moment of silence, or for us as prayer, just to ask God to use us the way He sees fit. So the Lord, just ask that you use us the way you see fit. I ask that we can restore relationships, that we also strengthen and honor you at this time, Lord, in our relationships with one another. I thank you for the Weavers for giving us of their time, and my daughter and my husband. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And so I just wanted to, each of you could introduce yourself, quick backgrounds about yourself, and then we'll go from there. So let's start with Adia.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Adia Grace Weaver. I am a senior at Princeton University from Lawrenceville, New Jersey, so 15 minutes away from campus. I'm majoring in anthropology, which maybe my dad can talk a little bit more about, but it's actually the same thing he majored in college. And I'm minoring in visual arts and working specifically in photography and visual media. So, yeah, I'm not sure what else I can really say, but that's my show.
All right. We'll let your father go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Weaver, and I am the father of Miss Adia Grace Weaver. I'm very proud of that beautiful young lady, and when she was born, it changed my life. Originally from the Bronx, New York, moved to New Jersey to come to college, and met Mr. Navarro, right, back in 1989, 1990. So I've known him for 30 plus years.
All right. Longer than me. Carol Navarro, either one.
Hello, my name is Carol Wright. I'm Rita Navarro's daughter, as she said, and I graduated from American University in 2020, and I'm now working as a strategic communications assistant at the Lead Company, which is a PR agency. And in school, I studied journalism, and I actually have an online magazine that I've been working on for the past 5 years, and I'm still working on today. And I've been helping my mom with her social media for this, so yeah.
Navarro Wright, Trenton, New Jersey, representing T-Town to the fullest. I have graduated from Rider University in 2000. What was that? 1993. Good Lord, yeah. 1993. Worked in the technology space for about 30 years now. I was the former CTO of Black Entertainment Television, former CTO of Radio and TV One, and the co-founder of GlobalGrind.com with Russell Simmons. And I'm currently the CTO at M&G Health. And a husband, a father, and all those stuff.
All right, sounds good. So I chose the Weavers, number one, because I know them. And I know Jay is a good father. And Adia, they were so elated when you were born. Your mother and father were overjoyed. As were we, because we were like the only ones having kids at the time. And we were like, somebody please have a baby in this from their circle of friends. So I wanted to start off with Adia. What do you think is, since you're actually doing the major that your father did, which I love that, what, and I don't want to have, I know the question is big, like what impact does your dad have on your life kind of thing. But Carol and I were talking earlier, and for me, one of the things I noticed the importance of fatherhood after I got to college. Like in high school, I would meet different girls and just think to myself, something's not quite right, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then when I went to college, I was like, oh, their relationship with men is a little different, or their view of men. And I realized that it wasn't as positive, and I think it's because their relationship with their father wasn't as positive. Have you found that, or what? Like, what's been your journey with that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I don't know that I've ever really thought about that or how it really came about in college, but I do feel like having my dad not only like close by, but just to be close to me has been like an incredible resource. Like he's always been there for me. And whenever I need help, whether it be academic, personal life, like he he's definitely someone that I lean on, and I'm not sure if that's true for everyone and like having close relationships with their parents like I do, but I feel like that having both my mother and my father as like a strong support has been like I wouldn't have like, been able to get through college. I wouldn't be able to get through high school. Um, and yeah, I feel like they've really been the reason why. They've been sort of the ones championing on in ways that friends and other people can't really do. So yeah, I would definitely say that they're just my dad in particular has been so helpful to me in college in specific.
And Jay, what's your take? Being grown, having a son and a daughter, but in college, did you find that you could recognize that in young women, or what's your take on that?
Absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned that, Rita, because I remember specifically in college, there were a handful of women that I knew who had really good relationships with their fathers. And then there were other women I knew who didn't have good relationships at all with their dads. And as I was growing older and thinking about marriage and the kind of father I wanted to be, I knew from an early age that I wanted to be a presence in my children's life, especially in my daughter's life. And I remember when Adia was born, I actually made a conscious decision at that time to leave my full-time job so that I could be a better dad in those early years when she was around and be a supportive husband for Karen. So, I think it's really important when possible for a father to be there and be a presence in their daughter's life, especially in the beginning, to set that foundation, to have a relationship that hopefully will last a lifetime.
Yes. And Carol?
Yeah, I could touch on it a bit too. I would say, like Lydia, when my parents are very present in my life in general, and so I've always felt like I could lean on my dad and my mom for help, and I do often. But I would say, I think one thing I've seen when it comes to like people who might not have strong relationships with their fathers or maybe not the best relationships is like something I see nowadays is that whole mantra that women like to say, like, men are trash, men are this. Like they have this like terrible view of men, and it started to become very trendy to like go around and say men are trash or like men are. And I usually with my friends, like I don't actually even do that joke because I'm like, hey, let's not like kind of use that language all the time, just because when I see those trends, I think of people in my family. Like my dad's not trash, my brothers are not trash, my uncles, my cousins. Like I just have men in my life who've been very good role models, and I feel like that's kind of starting to shift a bit, and people are starting to just kind of put down men more. And I think that can definitely stem from, not having a strong relationship with your father, or maybe just not having good men in your lives like that you can look at and feel like they love you and they value you. And so when you go out and look for that in other people, like it doesn't work out. And then you have this view of men that's, negative. So I feel like for me, at least in current day, that's where I see it the most. But I think that I've been very lucky to not have that view and not think of that of all men, and kind of, know that I have these men in my life who are always there for me and that I can have a positive outlook on too.
Cool. Navarro?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, absolutely being present, but I try to think about what the reasons are for being present. And I think it had a lot to do from growing up that my father wasn't really present. And when he was present, he wasn't present because he just wasn't involved. He didn't really add a lot of value. And I saw the toll it took on my mother. So I think when I became a father, the one thing I wanted to make sure was that my children never struggled or never felt like they were lacking. And I think that's evolved over time to where I felt like in the beginning, as long as they were okay financially, then they would be fine. And I think as I've gotten older and started to understand what it means to be a father a little bit more, I understood that there needed to be a balance of that. Yeah, it's great that you can provide for your family financially, but if you're not present, there's still a gap there. So especially as the kids have gotten older, and particularly our daughters have gotten older, not only just being a parent to them, but being, an example of who I want them to model, right? You always hear that girls marry their fathers, right? And in the last decade or so, there's so many girls who don't have fathers. They don't have anybody to model that after, so they go after the worst piece. So for me, it's been all about trying to model, especially later in years, model the man I want her to have in her life by being the best father I can be in her life today.
Excellent. Yes. One of the things that, and I guess I was pointing out, I don't know if it made a difference or not, but having gone to a women's college, so I was around women all the time. So I guess that's why it stuck out to me with that whole concept of what is your foundation and finding out about their relationship with their fathers. I don't know if that made a difference or not, but I think that's maybe why I noticed that a little bit more, perhaps. Another thing that I really appreciate about Jay, what you just said, is that you made a conscious decision to stay home. I understand that everyone can do that, and 100% understand that. But I do believe making a conscious decision to be a part of your child's life. So let's say you can't stay home financially, it's hard. What other things can a man do? Or even an uncle, like as Navarre saying, there's men who aren't present, fathers who aren't present. How can you step in? Because Carol, one thing my kids have benefited from is the alphas. Like my kids love when all you guys come over and hearing you guys talk like, oh, these Black men, they're all positive, they're all successful. It's been very endearing.
Yeah, I think Navarro hit the nail on the head earlier when he said, be a presence. And as a father or an uncle or a brother, I think it's key to figure out how you can be present in a child's life.
Yeah.
And that means having some kind of strategy by which either it's on the weekends or during the summer or over the holidays, but figure out a way where you can actually build a relationship with either your child or your nephews or your nieces so that they know who you are and they understand what you're about. And I think it's very critical, especially as Black men, to figure out those kind of strategies to build those presence in a child's life, because otherwise, if you're not there as a role model, they're going to turn to other role models that might not be positive, negative role models. And I think it's imperative upon us to figure out the best way to build those presences in our children's lives.
Does anyone else want to speak on that? Or
I mean, I can just kind of add on to that. I'll never forget one moment. I think it was freshman year in college, and I don't know if I got like a bad grade on a test or like a class wasn't going well, but suffice to say, I need to call my dad because I was like, things are just not good right now. And so without even asking what was going on, he just picked me up from school and we went and drove. I know he'll remember this. And we went and drove and got some popcorn and a big drink from AMC. And I was just in the car and I just like started crying. And I was like, Dad, oh my God, like everything
Just what you needed. Right.
Just what I needed at that moment. And I didn't ask for that. I had no idea. I was like, I don't know what to do. I didn't ask like beforehand, like to go to AMC or something like that. But it's just moments like that that have been so valuable and significant for me growing up, and going through those tough moments and knowing who to call and having someone like my dad who's reliable and can be there for me without any judgment, and have not always solutions, but just being there is just so important in a way that I think has been absolutely critical for me in my development. Yeah.
There's nothing like movie popcorn.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it.
And Navarro is of the same, built from the same cloth, I think, right? We would give everything for our children, especially our daughters, right? Because we know what's out there in the world. And so we made decision to have families, to have kids, and we understand that parenting is hard. Sometimes you got to drop everything for your child. And I think, Navarro, you've done it as well in the past, right? You would do anything for Carol. You would do anything for your children.
He gave his blood to Carol when she was born. Literally.
Wait, that doesn't remind me of the internship with like when Daddy had to go to what we had to go to?
My God.
Empire State Building.
Yeah, I interned my senior year of high school. I did a 3-week internship in New York, and we were working in the same building actually, but for different companies. And it was like my last week. So Carol, you can take this item, go to the Empire State Building. You can go like the back lot. You'll take the elevator up. And I was super excited because I was like, okay. But they were like, you cannot take an Uber or a taxi. Or, yeah, they wanted me to take the subway. And I was like, oh. So then I was like, okay, great. But then I left. And then I called my dad. I was like, I need you to come with me right now to the Empire State Building. Like, get me there. I have to take this thing. Then we got there. And then I didn't have the proper ID to go up. So he had to deliver it for me. Right. And so that's just those moments where it's like I was kind of a mess, but I knew that my dad would do it, and he did. He left work, and he was like, all right, and he left, and he delivered that for me. And that was a mess, but it worked out. But yeah, it's one of those moments where it's like he kind of just dropped everything and came and helped me, and it was just one of those funny stories now that we have.
Yeah. Navarro, do you want to say anything or?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jay's absolutely right. Like, people. When I think of some of the things that we've done or we do, like there was no thought in not doing it because it was for our children or our family. And I think a lot of people look at that and say you're crazy for doing that. But my argument back to them is you do a lot more for a lot less. So why wouldn't you do the extra thing for your family? And I go back to the whole thing about modeling what you want in their lives. If you don't do everything for your people in your family, why would they have the expectation that other people they bring in their lives would do everything for them? So if you don't set the expectation, you can't get mad at them if they go and connect with somebody who is subpar because they don't know what par looks like or they don't know what above par looks like. And I just think, why wouldn't you? Like, we always used to say, and I used to say this growing up, that like kids didn't ask to be here. So whatever decision you made, whether it was, you purposely had a child or you had a child and you didn't plan to have a child, regardless, that child didn't plan to be here. So the responsibility is not on the child, the responsibility is on you. And then at the end of the day, you if you care for your children, you're friends to your children. So there's a lot of stories people always say, well, man, my friend asked me to do X, Y, and this. There should never be a level that you've done more for your friends than you've done for your own children.
Gotcha. How do you think, and I guess it's not ironic because I'm obviously it's on purpose. I see now both of you adore your mothers, Jay and Navarro, and it's evident in how you take care of your mother, Jay. When I've met your mom and you love her, and unfortunately I never got to meet my mother-in-law. She had passed, but I know that you had. How have your mother, grandmother, whatever female superpowers in your life, how do you think that shaped you to be the man that you are? Because another thing, Kel and I were talking earlier today about this discussion, and I said, you know what? You do marry your father most of the time. So Navarro's very much like my father in a lot of ways. And then in other ways, he's not, right? But they both have had strong love for their mothers, and they both were surrounded growing up by females, which gave them I think an innate protective desire and love for women. That's the only way I can really describe it, that maybe some men don't have because of that. I really don't know what it is.
No,
but it's evident in both of you. So.
That's very accurate, Rita. I mean, when you think about the relationships that we as men have with our mothers, I think that really drives what ends up becoming the relationships we have with our wives and our daughters. Speaking personally, I have a very strong, tight relationship with my mother. And as the oldest child and her only son, I've become her protector and her provider as she's gotten older. And I just think back over the years as she's raised me, she's instilled in me a tender side, a loving side, a caring side that has translated into what I can provide to my wife and to my daughter. And I think that's important, having that relationship. And if you don't have a mom or you don't have a mother, maybe there's an aunt or some other strong matriarchal figure in your life. But I think it's important as Black men that we pick up some of that love from the older women that we have in our lives so that we can then spread that love to the women around us and the women who we are bringing into this world, our daughters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry, girl.
No, go ahead.
Follow up with I'm sorry about that. With Adia, just because it's her grandmother. So I just wonder, how do you see that relationship with your grandmother and father? Because it's so special. Like, how has that impacted you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the ways that my dad has cared for my grandma have been so, like, he is such a great caretaker in every sense of the word. And I've told him this before, like, especially during COVID and everything. She was actually in our care when everything started to go down with the pandemic. And so seeing firsthand just how caring my dad has been, and even was beforehand and continues to be sort of like one of her primary caretakers, it really sets the bar high in terms of finding people who are out there who can really commit to their loved ones and be there for them. And I think that not only has modeled for me like how I should behave and how I should care for my family, for my loved ones, but I think it's also been, like I said, definitely like a wake-up call in terms of how I think about people who I surround myself with and how they prioritize taking care of other people that they care about.
Love it. Sorry, Navarro, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, like the TV show that we like called Council of Dads. Like I was raised by a council of moms, right? I had my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother, and they were instrumental, and they each had served different roles and stepped in. There was times when we didn't have money, and my aunt stepped in. There was times when my grandmother, we were always at my grandmother's after school, and that was because my mom had to work and things of that nature. So they all added value and impact. And even to this day, I think of different things. Like my aunt was I remember like one summer she was like, all right, well, you know what? You need to get your money right. You went to college and got a couple credit cards. So you're going to get a job, but every paycheck, you're going to give me your paycheck. I'm going to pay your credit cards and then I'm going to give you a little bit of money. And I remember I was like, yo, what are you talking about? Like we're not doing this right now. But I now understand why she was doing it, because they all had a different, they had bigger expectations. And I think that's another key too, is that, they fit that role. So we recognize at a very early age that we wanted to meet their expectations. Like, I was involved in some shady situations growing up, and it was less about being afraid. It was more about not wanting to disappoint my mother. Like it was like I'd be somewhere and be like, yo, my mom would lose her mind. She knew where I was. Let me get out of here. And I would go back home. Right. So I think those influences have carried from the three of them, like you said, and heavily influenced like everything I do today.
And even, Navarro, just thinking on your past and how that Council of Women have instilled a care in you. I remember when your grandmother got sick and you made that decision to bring her into your home, to do construction in your home and make a comfortable place for her to spend her time. And I mean, that just showed the love and the care that they had instilled in you had become something that just blossomed out to end up taking care of her at that time in her life.
Yeah, and we faced flack from that. Like everybody out here, we got a ghetto family. You replace. They was like, and I'm like, yo, what are you talking about? Like when they didn't want to step up and do it, and that's what I mean about the consistent theme is when you do things at a higher level, there's going to be more people around you who question your decisions just because they're not at that higher level. So they assume you're at the same level as they are. But you're right. The beauty in that is, my children got to be around my grandmother. They got to have a unique relationship and memories of her that otherwise they would have never had. So where other people saw it was a curse, it was a blessing because we would have never had that time. We would have never had that time. And for us, it was easy. Like we rolled into our house one day and there was a bullet hole in the door, and I was like, "Yo, that's a wrap."
Get out of here.
I mean,
right.
We out here. So we was like packed her stuff up, and it wasn't even a second thought. So you're absolutely right. And knowing everything she did for me, Like it was a no-brainer to do that for her.
I just want to clarify by what Navarro was saying was the motivation. People were questioning like who paid for it, who, that kind of stuff. That's what he meant by the other family looking at us like double cross, like we're crazy. Meanwhile, he's financing everything. We're not taking her money, so you got to just, like he said, forge ahead, not worry what people think about you. Carol, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like 2 points, because I was going to bring up Nana too. And also the fact, I mean, I'm named after my grandmother, and I never met her, but I know that she was a really strong presence in my dad's life. And so when I do things, sometimes I kind of feel proud that I can, have her name and continue with her legacy. But I know she's a very hard worker, very loving. And so I feel like I have that in me. And so even when I graduated college, like my name's on the diploma, but she's on the diploma too. And so all those little things like that was really special for me. And then, also, my Nana lived with us, and I have a lot of funny memories of Nana. And even when her memory would kind of go when she got older, but when my little brother was born, she would walk in the room. We'd all say hi to Nana after school and everything. And she always like, oh, that's such a pretty little girl. But she was talking about my brother. But it happened, I swear, every day. But I always remember that and laugh because she was just so sweet. And she just had a lot of love in her heart, and you could tell. And so it was really awesome to have like that special time with her, before she passed away too. For me.
Awesome. Midpoint, is there anything that you guys wanted to talk about, Adia or Carol? I was told I'm not allowed to ask about college life, but they didn't say that to you guys.
Well, you could ask.
You want to ask your fathers about, college, when they were in college hanging out.
Let's make a caveat. You can ask about it.
We don't have to answer.
Incident.
It could be interesting though, especially for us, Dad. Since I went to your school, I went to your alma mater.
Well, let's talk about something for a second, right? So we went to school pre-internet, right? So a lot of those documents, you ever watch like how the government redacts data, like they cross out certain paragraphs? There are paragraphs that have been redacted.
That's right.
History and you should know. The only thing you need to know is every trick or something that somebody you're going to school with tried, we already know about. So we know what trifling looks like. We've seen it in all shapes and forms. We're not saying we participated in it. We just have seen it and we are aware of it.
Oh, gosh. I was just looking at some of the comments on Facebook, and a lot of the women, Adia, are saying what you said, that they call their father too when something happens, and they often look to their father. So that's really encouraging to know that there are fathers out there. Another thing I wanted to say, that I'm really trying to shift some of my language. So one of the things is, it just came to my mind when we talk about fathers who perhaps were absent, and I can't remember, something Navarro said triggered it, but I like to think that if a parent or someone was absent, that was God's way of having someone else come in, because maybe they didn't want that negative influence. You know what I mean? God's always looking out for us. So if a parent, instead of seeing the negative of it, I try to flip it and say, you know what? God was just saying, right now your parent is not where they need to be. So let me just bring in this other person, because it can be very hurtful. Jay, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Rita, because personally speaking, I came from a broken home. My parents got divorced when I was 12 years old. Okay. My sister was 9. And I remember the time because I actively said, I'm going to be like the opposite of my own father. Yep. I want to do things differently than what he did. And so growing up, I had a negative role model in a sense that showed me what not to do. So that when I got older, I said I wanted to do things differently, be a different kind of father, a different kind of man than my own father. And so that's kind of been a negative influence on me, because it's helped me model some positive behavior based on my own negative experiences.
Yes. And how do you think you were able to do that? Like some men don't. How were you able to do that and not replicate that?
One key thing for me has been surrounding myself with other good men, like Navarro, like our fraternity brothers, who are positive, who are about something. We have a network, in a sense, of people who are constantly pushing ourselves and pushing each other to do good and excel. And people we can bounce ideas off of, right? So that when things may not be going correctly or in the right direction, we can get advice, get guidance, get mentorship. I think too often as Black men, we don't like to ask questions. We don't like to make noise. We want to pretend that we know all the answers. But sometimes it's good to have a network of other people who you can just be yourself and open up to. And I think, surrounding yourself with positive role models from your own generation is a good step in that direction.
Oh, most definitely. Neville, do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, like Jay said, he came from a broken home. I came from a broke home, and we were broke because my father would gamble the money away. He would. I mean, I remember literally waking up like 8 years old, watching him steal money out of my mom's purse. So, like what Jay said on like 10,000, like I was adamant that I wasn't going to be that dude. Like I was like, I watched it. I just told the kids the other day, or was I telling you, Reed? I can't remember, about in-school suspension. Like people don't know, like when you went to Catholic school growing up and somebody didn't pay the tuition, they couldn't
in the cafeteria.
Right.
Oh,
because there was nobody home. So they would make you go sit in a room and do like dittos and worksheets. And everybody knew if you was in school suspension that your tuition wasn't paid.
Yeah, pay the bill.
So all of those memories fuel my actions. Like I never want my kids to be like, yo, the heat ain't on, or like, yo, the lights went out. Like, and I always tell them about the oil man. Like, we was growing up, we had the oil man. We used to sit in the cold waiting for Johnny Cake, the oil man. And we'd have to barter. Johnny, we only got 50. Can we get 20 gallons? Can we get 54? Like, these are true life stories. Right. So all of that shapes what I am. But on the flip side of that, my mother I remember my mother passed away, and I was dealing with her affairs. And I remember this vividly. I went to the bank to cash her last check and realized that she made $23,000 a year. Right now, I have just graduated from college. I'm out of school, etc. And this is no shade on anybody who makes $23,000 a year. But the reason why that was impactful for me is because I've literally never spent a day in public school. I went to a private school in New Hope, PA. I remember like all of the different things that she took me to. And then when I realized that, and I remember all the times when I was on the basketball team and I was like, nah, mom, if you can't get me the Patrick Ewings, I don't want nothing, right? Like, or I want the Jordans, or I want whatever. And all of that hit me in a rush when I realized that she did all of that on $23,000 a year. And I knew my father, who made 3 times as much, was stealing money from her because she was gambling, right? So all of that shapes how I do. And it probably shapes a lot of my entrepreneurial bent now, because I'm like, if she could do all of that on $23,000, there is no limitation. Like I tell people this to this day, there's, opportunity is not a mistake. It's something that you have and you ignore because you're not willing to do. So she created, her first startup was me. So she created that, she incubated it, she took it public, all on $23,000. So for me, that was the negative impact coupled with that positive impact, which motivates me to this day.
Dee and Carol, do you want to? Anything you want to say or add, or something come to mind?
I mean, I can touch on that a little bit just because, as my dad was saying, he's an entrepreneur, and I feel like he definitely transferred a lot of that onto me and my siblings. And I started like my business when I was a senior in high school, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that I had the support of my dad and my mom, my family. I knew I could go to him for questions. I knew that if he knew someone who could help me, he would. And I actually got my mentor like through my father, which has been helpful. But I just feel like, because of how he was raised and how he took that positive energy and like transformed his life with that, he gave it to us and gave it to me. And now I feel like I can start a business and I can kind of do these things that maybe if I was raised differently, I wouldn't believe that, but I know that I can because of him. And so I just feel like that same sort of belief that he grew up with, like he put in us. And I feel very grateful for that, because now I can kind of do anything I put my mind to at this point when it comes to creating a company or just starting something out of nothing, basically.
Adia?
Yeah, I would totally echo the same thing here in terms of positive energy just being poured into us from birth. And I almost feel like kind of opposite from Mr. Navarro in the sense that, not that we grew up like pinching pennies or anything, but I did have some of those same experiences of like, oh, Dad, I want this and that. And then my mom would be like, no, we're going to be, very rational about how we sort of save money and things like that. And so I have some very strong memories from my youth when my dad taught me about we had 4 separate buckets, and he was like, all right, this is the saving bucket, This is the spend bucket, this is the investing bucket, and then this is our donating bucket. And so we're going to be very mindful about how we use our money. And even though, even to this day, I like to spend money on things, and sometimes I should save more, invest more, but there's lessons like that I know are, based in and stemmed in their own childhood, my dad's own childhood, his own relationship with money, in his upbringing. And so it's moments like that really make me value and appreciate him, and that have stuck with me all the way to my 21 years right now.
That's awesome. Well, Dee, I have a funny story for you. Your father, I stay home, so I don't work outside the house. And I remember your father was doing a marathon, and you guys lived in North Jersey, I believe at the time. Nevrel, tell me if I'm wrong. I think it was North Jersey, or was it?
Yep, Montclair.
So. Either way, your father wasn't working there. Your father had decided he was doing this marathon. He was taking off work. And I know North Jersey costs more than South Jersey, where we were living. And I got that car, and I said to Nevrel, what the heck is Jay doing? Get his, how he manages his money. Clearly you need it. And the first thing your dad said to me, Theo, was like, well, you can stop going to Starbucks? I was like, Dad? And he was like, well, then call me when you're ready to start.
You remember that, right, Rita?
Okay, great. You gotta sacrifice something. I was like, Jay, I don't know about all that. I was like, can I just go to Starbucks and then do it? He's like, no, you can't. Now, what are you gonna do? He said, do you want to work? I was like, not really. He's like, well, you got to. But I love your father. Your father is our go-to money guru. Right? He is, because he's disciplined. He has this, so I was telling him, well, ask Jay about this stock, or ask, so we always crack up. I'll never forget that story. Your father was like, well, you're going to stop going to Starbucks. And I was like, Lord, right.
It's a simple equation, right, Rita? Revenue or expenses. If the revenue ain't there, you got to cut the expenses. Simple as that.
I was crying. I was like, oh, Lord, have mercy. No, but exactly. I really do appreciate that about your father. And what I love about, again, and I talk about the fraternity so much, only for you guys in particular, just because all of you are entrepreneurs. When I think about the different guys who come over at Christmas every year, or whenever and it's all of you have your 9 to 5 and the entrepreneurs at the same time. And I remember when, Adia, just looking back, you would come over, let's say Christmas, what was the impact of seeing so many positive Black families together all the time? I think that had a huge impact, and I didn't realize how much so until my sons were talking about it. We can't wait to Daddy's friends, Frat, come over. I love when he's like, oh, what up, Frat? And they say, no, 6. And they were mimicking. So what impact did it have on you and your brother?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's things like that I miss so much now, with everything being distanced, And even now, we make fun of my dad, 06, we definitely
flashing the size and
all the time. But I really do feel like all of those events and growing up grounded and seeing the same people year after year, and getting to sort of, even if we weren't best friends, or even if we didn't always keep in great contact, I really think it was important. And growing up, going to some predominantly white schools, especially as I got older, having those spaces and knowing that there are other Black children, other Black families who are successful, who come from grounded backgrounds and who are there for us, that was just really, really special. And so, yeah, those are some of my warmest memories for sure.
And I think Adia's right in that we miss it more now because we don't have it because of the pandemic, right? Exactly. And so we took so many things for granted before, but now that it's gone because of the social distancing, you're really feeling the impact of missing it. And somebody made a comment earlier that just made me remember, growing up, I did not have the network that I have now of positive Black role models. But I always remember wanting it. And my encouragement is to tell anyone out there who doesn't have a father in their life, or a grandfather or an uncle, find someone, whether it's in the church or at your job or some relationship, there's someone out there who can take you under their wing and provide positive guidance, mentorship. It just takes effort, but you have to want to make a difference. You've got to want to find that difference, a person to make a difference in your life. And I remember going to college and saying to myself, well, I'm now in a new space, in a new place. I need to find a group of people who are going to help me push forward with things I want in my life. And then that's when I actually found the fraternity, and I made the decision to join, and, met guys like Navarro and some of the other brothers. And ever since then, it's just been a positive force pushing us forward in life.
Yes, definitely. Navarro, do you want to say something to that, or?
No, I can just echo it. Like you said, I think for, for us, it's always about being around people that no matter what you're doing, there's always somebody doing a little bit more. So it doesn't allow you to rest on your laurels, right? I think the biggest thing that unfortunately in the Black community is complacency and what we think is the plateau. I think many of us set our plateaus way too low because we're like, yo, we was really struggling and now we just all right. So that's good. But I think I know Jay and I know our children have seen it. Like when you're just around people that are always doing something different, like like being idle is almost a sin to us. Like they're always doing something different and something new and innovative. You kind of sit back and think, well, what am I doing? Like what can I do differently or whatever? And to me, the model behavior is the theme of the night. It's proven in that, right? Adia's about to graduate from Princeton. Carol graduated from American. She's about to go to Harvard Business School, right? Like those things don't just happen. Those happen because you model behavior and you know that there's not a plateau for you. And I think as Black people, having people to see that there's always a higher plateau, we don't have enough of. We can find low plateaus
everywhere.
I can take you someplace we can just scan low plateaus. So, but if you can find some people who continue to have higher plateaus, it forces you to aspire to do it. And I'm not talking about comparison. I'm talking about it pushing you, like, because ironically, the other thing about us as a group, particularly our chapter, like we don't compare. Like
it's not competitive.
We admire and we're like, man, I gotta get them, but we don't compare because when everybody's pushing, there's always somebody doing something better than you. So comparing is a futile thing because there's always somebody who's in the bigger level. So I think that's a big part of it too.
I like that you brought up comparing. How do you, they're there with you. What do you say to your daughters about them comparing themselves to other women, whether it's looks, intelligence, I don't know, whatever, what as fathers? And have you seen that? Do you think they do that? Do you think that's real? Like, what's your story, Jay?
So I think one of the biggest challenges facing Black women today is self-esteem. And I think it's imperative as fathers that we do everything at all times to help build up our daughter's self-esteem. And I think once you come from a point of strong self-esteem and self-worth, then you can make those decisions about who you bring into your life. Otherwise, when you have low self-esteem or issues about your own self-worth, then it's easy for that dog to just sneak into your life and spit some words in your ear that might make you feel good when in fact that's the wrong thing you need to be hearing.
Yeah, exactly. Adia, what do you think? What do you think about the self-esteem of your age, of young Black women? Because I agree with your father. I think it's lacking. So what do you?
Oh, for sure. I think it's definitely a major issue, and it's something that we, in our household at least, discuss all the time. And there were things like community initiatives that really bolstered that for me growing up. I think things like the New Jersey Orators, and having spaces that really affirmed our Blackness, but also our importance and our self-worth. But I do think as a Black woman in particular, especially like going through high school, going through college, and like having to endure some things that come along with being in a predominantly white space, that definitely took a toll on my self-esteem. And so my father has seen firsthand how I've sort of dealt with that. And it's been people like him who are there to champion me and be like, no, that's just like none of those things that you believe are true, or none of things other people believe are true. But if you don't have people like that to sort of just say no to the narrative, it can definitely sort of spiral and leave people just victim to really poor self-esteem in bad situations.
I just want to ask you something further, without getting too personal. With your friends on campus, or just, any of your friends, Black females, have you had to step in as that role for them? Like something happened to you, and you see, like I remember my dad said this to me, or my mom. So then you find yourself doing that, building them up?
I think that happens all the time.
Okay.
And I don't want to say that it does, but we really do lean on each other for support in so many ways. And so I think something that's been really important to me and crucial, especially right now, is sort of reinforcing self-esteem, self-worth, and being like, girl, you don't need that. You don't need him. You don't need this. You don't need that. Like, let's really take a real look at things here. And it can get hard because if you don't have people in your life who are constantly affirming that, for sure, things come in that will instantly negate it or will make it harder for you to recognize your own self-worth.
Love it. Carol, do you?
Yeah, I can really touch on that in two ways. I definitely agree with Dia about the self-esteem, and sometimes, might come in the form of like people dating people that just don't treat them well and aren't really there for them because they think, oh, well, this person values me in this way and I'll take what I can get, which definitely can stem from, maybe how your relationship was with your father growing up. And I feel like I saw that a lot in college. I always am the friend who's kind of like never really dating, and everybody's like, hey, Carol, what's going on? Like, nothing. But I don't really mind it, but I have had to have a lot of discussions with my friends where they're like, where I'm just like, I'm really not kind of seeking that out all the time. And like, you can kind of tell when people are seeking that out a lot to sort of fill some sort of void or feel like they need to get value from this boy that they met. And I'm just very lucky that I've had my father and my mom to really raise me in a way where I don't look for that and I don't really need that to feel like I'm valued. And I feel like that definitely comes from a big part of how I was raised. And I think a second part of that, I'm an AKA now, and I have blind sisters, and we're always talking about, just like helping each other feel good, hyping each other up, making sure that if somebody is with somebody and it's just not right, like we're very candid and honest with each other, but just having those like Black girls who I can surround myself with, who I consider sisters, has been very helpful too. And kind of like Adia said, like you have to be sometimes that friend who's like, this isn't right. You don't need that person. I'm stepping in here. And so that's been a big part of it too.
All right. I want to ask the fathers, and this question, so when I was in either a junior or senior in college, I believe Anita Hill, that controversy had come up. And my sister and I were talking about that a lot, and our take on it. And sometimes it's very hard for me because, like I said, I had a strong foundation. Like sometimes when I hear stories from other women, I'm like, well, why were you even putting up with that? Because I'm like, dude, I don't need, I walked out. But I understand now, it's getting older, mature. You need the job, you have, or the whether financial reasons or for the fact it's your career, and why should you put up with any type of harassment of any kind? So that's still evolving for me. As fathers, what advice do you have for your daughters and other young women who are entering the workforce? We've been blessed that our daughters have been in work places that have been safe environments. Either we know the owner, or we luckily Carol's in the pandemic. It's the pandemic; she's home right now. But so we had that conversation hasn't really come up in a serious matter. I mean, we talk about it, but not to the point where I think that we've given her like laid out, or Navarro, maybe you have, where you've said, if you find yourself in this position, this is what you do, or what are the steps, or because I just keep hearing a lot of stories of young women being harassed and taken advantage of, and that's one of my angst for my daughters.
And it's even more of an angst for me as a father,
exactly,
as my daughter enters the workplace,
yeah,
and worrying about what some guy might do or say to her in a certain situation. You mentioned the whole Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill incident. Look at what's going on now in New York State with Governor Cuomo and his office and the allegations of harassment. And it's happening everywhere, right? So I think the challenge that we face as fathers is how do we best prepare our daughters to understand the situation and respond appropriately, so that they are within their legal rights as well as their personal rights, so that they feel comfortable in the workplace. And it's an ongoing conversation. There's no single right answer. One thing I've done with Adia when she was younger is I've taught her how to fight. right? So Adia knows that in certain situations, sometimes you just got to fight, right? Get your hands off of me. Other situations are a little bit more tricky to navigate. You know, is this guy flirting with me or is he being inappropriate, right? And just understanding what those signals are. Navarro and I grew up in a time where, and we have a lot of frat brothers who are just straight up dogs. You know, most of them, Rita, right? And we know how they roll. So we can give some advice as to, you know, what to expect from certain people. But, you know, it was a different time when we grew up. One thing Adia and I talk about is the movie School Days and how, you know, in School Days, she was licking his part, right? What is that today, right? And, you know, what does that mean in 2021? And, you know, it's a lot of nuances that we have to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes. I think the key thing is helping them understand that you always have options. There's always an alternative, because if you look at a lot of the stories, right, if you go through everything that happened at the root of it, that person for some reason felt like they didn't have another option than to allow themselves to be taken advantage of, right? Whether it's they thought they were going to lose their job, or they thought no one was going to believe them, and whatever that is. So I think if we can teach our daughters that, I don't care what it is, right? You can always walk away. You always have another option, that they know that, so they're less likely to get in those situations. Because a lot of times it happens that people don't think they have options. And then when they realize the situation is going south, it's actually too late for them to get out of it, right? And then if you look at the flip side, now with things that are going on, that's why you have one person say something, and then you have 5 other people say, oh yeah, it happened to me too, because they didn't want to lose what they had when it happened, and they didn't feel like people were going to believe them, so they don't bring it up. But now they come out later and they've actually lost credibility, because people are like, well, why didn't you say that six months ago when it happened, right? So, but it goes back to, you always have options, right? There is no situation that if you know it's inappropriate that you have to be in. It doesn't matter if it's your job, if it's your quote unquote dream opportunity, because dream opportunities don't get created by nightmare. So like, you don't have to, you can walk out and go to something different, because you always have an option.
Okay. Adia and Carol, have you found yourself in situations, or have your friends told you, it could have been a professor, it doesn't have to be, you know, work, or that they felt harassed or threatened in some way? Have you seen that at all, or?
I mean, I guess recently with the conversation, I don't want to mispronounce her name, but I think Sarah Ever, that happened in England, and the police officer took advantage of her. And I've been seeing a lot of posts about that online, and people sharing their stories about how basically probably every woman you know has been, you know, catcalled or harassed or something by a man, and that it kind of has to start at a lower level versus like, I mean, obviously a woman has to know how to protect herself, but it kind of also goes back to like raising your son to know not to just take advantage of a woman, and knowing that you can't just do things to them just because you want to. Like, people have boundaries, they have rights. So I think for me recently, the conversation I've seen is that people are coming out with their own stories, whether I know them personally or online, and that they're feeling that there's kind of this wave happening where they feel more comfortable sharing what happened to them, because more people are saying, I actually experienced this too, and people knowing they're not alone. And even at the time, I guess like my dad was saying, some people don't think they have options, or they don't see a way out of a situation, and unfortunately someone else can sense that and they take advantage of that. But for me, I think right now the biggest thing is kind of like that teaching level for maybe a young boy or a teenager, and like teaching them what you do not do to a woman. And then unfortunately, because that doesn't happen as often, women having to learn like how to protect themselves, text a friend when you go out, get that app that can alert your location, those sort of things. But that's kind of the bigger conversation I've been seeing right now. And unfortunately, I have had friends who have gone through different things where they've been taken advantage of. And, you know, it's just unfortunate that had to happen. And luckily now it's kind of more of an open conversation.
Adia?
No, absolutely. Everything that Carol said, same here. I agree. And unfortunately, yeah, I think that the harsh reality is that a lot more people are affected by things like that than we want to have to deal with it. And the problem stops with teaching young boys and teaching men. And unfortunately, as young women, we've had to learn. And my dad has been a big part of that in terms of helping to prepare for different situations. But yeah, the problem starts with men. not women.
Now, both of you being big sisters, have you had those conversations with your brothers about dating and or just being polite, being gentlemen, basically?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, which I can't imagine John having a girlfriend. I don't even want to talk about it. But yeah, what advice or what have you shared with him?
No, definitely. I think being a big sister has been so special and insightful on the whole, especially like recently as my brother's like got into his teenage years. Now he's 18. And kind of he's 18 now, yeah. And kind of having to like serve from the other side in a sense, like having grown up as a girl and now as a young woman, seeing how guys have treated girls and then being able to kind of turn that around and be like, okay, John, don't do this because this is a really terrible thing. And just kind of being able to not only provide advice, but just even like firsthand experiences has been really important, I think, for both of us, just to sort of reflect on different things that people do.
Carol?
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes it's just, telling them little things or just leading by example of like how I like to be treated, then that's how you should treat someone if you're going to date them or just in general be friends with a girl at your school or something. And it's on different levels since, James is very much at the stage like, I'm not even looking, I'm not interested right now. And, Navarro's in college, so he's having a different experience. But for me, it's just like little things, like when Navarro's in high school and just telling him like, no, respond like this or do this thing because girls, that's special. Even when it came to like a senior prom, he was in public school and he didn't realize how big of a deal senior prom was to girls because our school, like with the high school I was in, I got to go to prom every year because it was really small. But I was trying to explain to him, no, these girls get one prom. It's very special. You have to be kind. You have to do a promposal, all this stuff. He's like, what are you talking about? But even like little things like that, just like little things how to treat girls in your life. And when he took her to the prom and he kind of did the promposal and all that, it was very special for her. But I think that honestly, part of it is just leading by example and just telling them as they go on and do different things. Like, this is how I would be treated. This is how I would like to be treated. And this is what you should do for this person in your life, for sure. And it's definitely funny seeing it from the other perspective. Now that they're older, I'm not just like, what are you even doing, even dating or like trying to date? Like, you can stop that right now. But so I try to just be there for them for advice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, this just hit me. I'm taking a turn for Carol and Adia. And this question, I don't know, because you guys are blessed and you're both very intelligent, and I know you surround yourself with like-minded people. How has it been? Well, have you ever had a friend, right? Because I'm sure you guys are high achievers, and your friend could be a high achiever as well. But as your father, Adia, stated earlier, it's important who you surround yourself with. So have you ever had to step back inside your mind, not even have to confront a person, but just realize, you know what, this person is not going where I'm going? And I'm talking about other female friends, or they're not striving for what I want. How did you have to handle that? Has that happened to you?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
And I think especially as we get older, sort of distilling everyone's motivations it's one thing when you're younger, but then especially like right now, it's a lot easier to tell when people are sort of in your lane and when they're not. So I definitely, I think having my parents model for me not only like what my behavior, what I aspire to, but then as you guys have already mentioned, having strong networks and people who I feel like I can depend on and who have similar values. It's not easy to be like, all right, I want to like separate myself from this person or I want to kind of like distance per se, but I definitely have had to deal with that. And I think it's not easy, but it's important to kind of realize that it's your network is your net worth. I think it's what my mom always says.
Oh,
And it's true. It's true. So
Karen got bars.
Exactly.
Okay. Carol.
No, I completely agree. And I feel like it's not something I was really as conscious of, maybe until I got to college. My parents do talk a lot about our friends. We have a lot of family meetings on friends who we're talking to and things like that. But it didn't really hit me until kind of college and post-college now, where like my mom will bring up like who I'm around and the things my friends are doing. And I'm like, wow, actually my friends really are doing some great things and they're in some good places. And I guess that just happens kind of naturally. I feel like once you start to maybe raise the bar or just work harder, then those people kind of come to you and you guys find each other. And then people who maybe, as Adia said, like aren't in your lane, they kind of naturally kind of go away because they're not really following you on that same path. So I think that happened a lot for me. And I just feel really lucky that even friends I've had since I was like 3 years old, like they're killing it now still, and we can still be tight and have that relationship and also motivate each other to really work hard and keep going. And my friends, I'm always cheering on my friends. We're always sharing. If we have good news, they can text me. I know I can text them if I have something going on. They're always supporting me. And so I feel really fortunate for that. But I definitely agree with the idea that you can tell when someone's kind of not on that same path, on that same journey. And I think that's something that just they'll kind of naturally go as time goes on.
So as we start to wind down, Jay, what do you want for Adia? And when she was born, everyone has dreams for their children, right? And not saying this, of course she's lived up to the dream, but has that evolved as you've gotten older, more mature? Has your dream evolved, or just what do you want for her? What did you see when she was born that September, and what she now?
Yeah, now that Adia is 21 years old, I just turned 50, it's changed a little bit. And as you know, Rita, we all caught COVID last year. We were all blessed to survive it. But now that... Absolutely.
Boy.
Thank you. Now that we've come through that valley, what I want most for her is health and happiness, right? I want to make sure that she's got the health that she needs to be happy. And that means eating right, exercising, having good mental energy, all the things that are necessary to make her happy. And to me, health is what drives that happiness. When she was first born, it was a little bit more about, I wanted to have a nice lifestyle and, meet a wonderful man and have a family, 5 kids, a dog, and a house. Yeah, look at her eyes, got all big, right? I want a whole lot of grandkids, Rita, at some point. But now, it's really about just her happiness and making sure that she's happy. And one thing I always like to say is, I love you. I make sure every day I say it as much as I can, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times. It's never enough, so that she knows that I love her. And I think as fathers, that's something that we can do more of, is just making sure that the people around us know that we love them. And as Black men, I think that sometimes that's hard to say those 3 words, I love you. And so I try to do that as much as possible with Adia.
I love it. Navarro?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the same things. I think today is really about the courage of having freedom of choice. I don't ever want Carol to feel like there's anything she can't do or, is not able to do. Because if you think that way, then that means there might be something you aspire to or you dream to do that you don't do because you think you don't have the choice to do it. So the freedom of choice. And I think to Jay's point, right, knowing that no matter where you go in the world and the toughest situations, that you're loved, and you have people who tell you that they love you every day. So you're going to hear that. So you don't go in the world having to hear that from other people, right? If you hear it from people and it's authentic, that's fantastic, but you don't have to hear it, right? And I think that, a lot of women in particular, they don't hear it, so they have to hear it. So they're willing to hear it from places that may not necessarily be the best place. So I always want Carol to know she doesn't have to, right? It goes back to that choice. And to Jay's point, I don't ever want her to feel hurt and pain, but I know that might not be possible for me to stop from happening. But I try to create as much of an environment where that unnecessarily limits, puts limits on that as possible. And the life lessons, right? Like, so that, because we're not always going to be here. And I think for me over the last year, I felt about that more than ever, because I've seen people that I know get sick. I've seen people that I know pass on. So really now it's about, okay, what's the legacy of thoughts, feelings, and impressions that I'm leaving, right, that can be used, once we're not here. So that's kind of what I want.
All right. And Carol, what do you want to say to your father and thank him for instilling in you?
Oh, man. Okay. Oh yeah, I would say. Well, I would just thank him for instilling me like a self-love that I have that comes from him. As he said, telling me he loves me, but also just showing me like how a man's supposed to love me and how I'm supposed to be treated. And also, I think just a work ethic and that kind of entrepreneurial spirit and that drive. And then also a sense of fun because we have a lot of fun together. Love going to the movies. We love watch TV. We love doing different things. Even thinking about like what were we thinking about the other day? We would go on little father-daughter dates. He took me like Broadway once. We had a good night. It's just like little things like that. But definitely the fact that he loves me and that he kind of put that entrepreneurial spirit in me and then that sense of fun that I know we can always have together too.
And Miss Weaver.
I would just say thank you and I love you.
I love it. I love it. It's awesome. I just want to say thank you to the fathers. I want to say thank you very much, Jay, for being such a positive role model to my children, to Navarro. You don't know how many nights we've been up and discussing different business ideas and different things. And Navarro said, "Oh, I'm gonna run it by Jay," and we call Jay up and see what he thinks about this. It's been very, very. It's really been a blessing to us. All you guys, all the frat brothers have been a blessing. And you're right. We were looking through pictures of last Christmas when you guys came down and the little babies, and we were cracking up because our oldest is going to be 27. And meanwhile, I think Warren's baby was what, 1 or 2?
Right.
Crazy. And like it's the same age. And I was like, dude, I'm about to have a 27-year-old. You have like a 1, 2-year-old. So it was funny to see that. But I just want to say thank you to both of you. I want to say also thank you for raising and having beautiful daughters. Adia, I tell you, you were such a blessing to your parents. Your parents prayed for you. We were so excited when you were born. And then to have you and Carol. And one thing, Adia, Carol and I were talking about this, and I always want to make sure going forward, not even because of the pandemic, but I try to let people know stories while they're here. So have this memory because you might not remember this, but you would come to our house and you were an avid reader, like Carol. Carol loves to read. But what I loved about your relationship is that you would come and your father would be like, "Oh, Adia's fine. She's supposed to go in Carol's room and read." And the kids would be in the basement, all the other kids or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And you would come and you would one time you make candy apples. One time you you would make things and drop it off and get your book. And I'm like, oh, I think, is she good? And Carol was like, "Oh, I checked on Adia already." And I was like, "What do you mean?" "Oh yeah, I went up there, I talked to her, we hung out for a little bit, but Adia's cool." She said, "No, she doesn't want to be with us." Okay. And Carol would go back downstairs, do her thing, go back upstairs. But I was cracking up, and I said, "You know what? I love that because you were comfortable enough in yourself that you didn't have to sit downstairs just to make other people comfortable. You know what I mean? Like you had enough self-love, and also I felt that you felt comfortable in our home. Like you felt like I'm home, so I can just chill by myself. And I think that made a really good relationship for you and Carol because both of you were just who you are with each other. Like, you know what I mean? And I really appreciate that. And it's things like that. I think that you don't recognize it at the time until later on. You look back like, that was dope. I like that. Like you would just come and chill and you were fine. So I don't know if you remember that, but it should crack us up. You would have your book, you'd walk in, "Hi, Mr. Mrs. Wright, how you doing?" Drop off your little treat, and you'd be gone. Look, all right.
And I used to do the same thing, Rita, when I was a kid. I absolutely.
I love it.
I must have passed that down too.
It's right. No, it's funny. And see how crazy how that is. How would she even know that you do that? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, some things are innate. So I just want to say thank you guys so much. I love celebrating Women's History Month with you guys. Tell your mother and wife hello. Is she at work? She is at NYU. What's going on at NYU? Are they?
So they are still virtual until September. So she is working from home for now, which has been a blessing. Yep.
Full house.
Full house. So our heating bill has been like this, Rita.
We know.
I love it. We can't wait to see you guys again and spend some time with you again. So anything else? Anyone else want to say anything? Or I just want to say thank you so much. And
thank you, Rita, for hosting us. And I think it's wonderful having this conversation series and getting everyone together because during this pandemic, we miss people. We miss seeing you. We miss being around you. So we just can't wait until we can see everyone live in person at some point soon.
Yes. All righty. Well, thank you so much. Everybody have a good night. Good luck.
It's so good to see you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye,
So
everyone.
much.